Much like I did for Pit of Heresy, today will be my guide on soloing Prophecy. And much like I did for Pit of Heresy, this guide will not feature the use of any pinnacle weapon, ritual weapon, exotic armor, and new to the rules, seasonal mods from the artifact or any season. And I must warn you, it is significantly more difficult and taxing than the other two dungeons. And I'm going to be real with you. I have yet to solo flawless this dungeon using those rules, although I have done solos. And I'll be real again. You're probably going to want to do this on a Titan or a Warlock if you do not have access to high-level equipment. Let's talk loadout. Because I am limited by rules, I used a hand cannon, sniper, sword, and heavy machine gun. If you have access to certain weaponry, like Mountaintop, Recluse, Anarchy, other exotics, exotic armor, taken mods from Last Wish, or seasonal mods from any season, like Charged with Light mods, you should use them. I limit myself to show that it is still possible to solo the dungeon without these things in case you don't have them. If you're watching this outside of Season 11, the hand cannon, sniper, and machine gun are very likely replaceable, and as far as the sword goes, any sword with Relentless strikes and Whirlwind blade will serve you well. The dungeon is a very difficult solo under these rules. I would recommend 1060 light at a minimum, as you will need all the help that you can get. When it comes to subclass selection, because I'm working with only the most basic of options, I opted for safety over everything. That means Well of Radiance, Ward of Dawn, and Shadow Shot. You're going to want some form of a damage boost for boss targets, otherwise something like the final boss is going to take you quite a long time. I'm not going to dwell on the opening too much because it's very straightforward, it's not very difficult. Just collect motes and dunk them in and be very careful. There is no rush here. This video also assumes that you are familiar with the dungeon and its mechanics, as I will not be going over them. For the first encounter, I used a hand cannon, sniper, and a sword. You'll start the fight with 3 knights spawning in a triangle formation around the arena, with 2 groups of scions spawning in shortly after. These are both a major problem. Scions unchecked will continue to multiply, and your power weapon isn't designed for killing them, not to mention will leave you vulnerable if you attempt to use it. The knights hurt really bad and spread fire everywhere. This encounter, and the entire dungeon really, is all about enemy management. Scions should always be disposed of when possible, whereas knights need to be managed a little bit more for your safety. Knights will spawn in groups of 3 and will only respawn when there are no knights remaining in play. This is important, as trying to slam motes with 3 knights respawning at a bad time almost always results in death. Ideally, you are dropping in motes when you only have 1 or 2 knights alive. I won't say it's impossible to drop in motes with all of the knights respawning, but you need to be dunking them before they fully spawn in, otherwise you will get nuked. Next, regarding the knights. It's okay to kill knights and not pick up motes. If the knights are giving you trouble, there's too much fire, there's too much damage, there is nothing wrong with killing 1 knight to give you some space. You can always pick up the motes just in case you're able to make something happen. They do last for 30 seconds after you grab them, but if you need some space to breathe, or maybe a scion wave is spawning in, it is okay to kill the knights and not pick up motes. One final thing regarding the knights. On occasion, knights will become intensely aggro to you, chasing you down, firing their weapon non-stop until you create enough distance. Most of the time, the play will be to simply run away and hope you survive. If you have a sword, with the ammo to spare, if your positioning is good and your health is okay, hitting them with a heavy attack from your sword is not a bad idea to stop their pursuit of you. Most of this fight will be spent going around the outer ring of the arena, kiting and killing knights and scions, gradually dropping in motes when it's safe. Hunters will want to utilize but not completely rely on invisibility to get out of bad spots, Titans with walls, and Warlocks with rifts. Titans, remember that you can drop a wall on an enemy to stun them if things get desperate. And to all classes, using your class ability will cause your mote that you are holding to disappear. So hunters, make sure you go invisible before grabbing those final motes. The biggest note that I can give on dropping in motes is that your momentum comes to a complete stop when you activate the mote. Please keep that in mind because it will kill you. Note that while it is technically possible to clear 2 of the nodes with 1 mote, it is very risky to do and requires really precise positioning. I typically will kill 1 knight right off the bat to reduce the starting chaos, collect those motes, kill scions, and then kill another knight. Scions will respawn after you drop in your first mote, just be ready for that. It's ideal to leave that final knight alive until you dispose of all of the scions. Here is an example of a mote phase. I play this basically the same way on all of the classes, utilizing my class ability when needed, rifts to stay alive, walls to block damage or stun, and invis to escape. When it comes to the boss actually doesn't hurt that badly. I chose a sword for this fight because it will be by far the highest damage option unless you want this fight to go on for a long time. For the most part, when the boss became vulnerable, I started swinging and almost never stopped until the goblins spawned in. There will be plenty of times where the boss is immune to sword swings because of its shield. You just need to wait for an opening or move around the boss to find a new opening. Only after you get damage numbers or get the boss to stagger should you attempt a heavy attack, otherwise you're just going to waste your ammo. If you're on a Titan, dropping a Ward of Dawn right on top of the boss is a good way to start. If you're on a Warlock, dropping a Well on top of the boss is a good way to start. On Hunter, I tried saving my tether for when the goblins spawned in an attempt to kill all of them with said tether, but most of the time it didn't really work out the way I'd hoped, only catching 1 or 2 of them. You're probably better off using tether immediately to front load your damage before the goblins spawn in. As long as you get the boss to about half, you can spend the rest of the time just getting rid of goblins and dealing chip damage. For Warlocks, Well of Radiance actually allows you to bypass the shield the boss is holding, making every swing deal damage. This is very important as you can one-cycle this boss solo with Falling Guillotine, and you can also just spam the Whirlwind attack as much as you are able to. If this ever gets fixed, then you will just 2-cycle it like the other classes. You do not get this luxury on Titan or Hunter, so a 1-cycle will be pretty out of reach, and I would not expect a 1-cycle of this boss on a Titan or a Hunter. I was able to 2-cycle it on my Titan and my Hunter. After the boss regains its shield again, you just start the whole thing over. You should need at most 3 cycles to kill this boss using this loadout. My final note for the boss is make sure you have an escape plan. If you are still dealing damage to the boss as a new wave of knights is spawning in, you are going to die. Just get the boss to around half and clear the goblins, because the goblins do not despawn. The stuff you need to do before the second encounter is pretty self-explanatory. Just roam around, kill the blights, and play it safe. For the second encounter with regards to subclass, there's no boss here, so again, I would just recommend using safety supers, Ward, Well, and Shadow Shot. There's absolutely room for variance depending on your setup, and you should really just use whatever works best for you, but if you're playing low risk, that is what I used. I know people like to use Devour on Warlock, that might be better for certain people, maybe Arcstrider for Hunters. I just wanted to stick with safety. The second encounter is also about enemy management, but it's also about hitting very specific timings, at least it was for me. When you start the encounter, you'll be greeted by a lot of acolytes, along with 2 hobgoblins in the upper deck. You should immediately try to find which kind of mote you will need, and make this a habit upon entering a new room. Acolytes will spawn on a timer. This is important because of the timings we'll need to hit to ensure a smooth rotation. Here's how I handled this fight. When the wave starts, I killed a hobgoblin and then went to my heavy machine gun to kill all of the acolytes in the room, or most of them anyway. I then killed the knight that spawned, and then another hobgoblin, and then the second knight. This is all happening rapid fire. Most of the time, I'd try to position myself near where I need to drop the mote, but not all of the time. Depending on where I needed to drop the mote, I would sometimes kill another hobgoblin so that while the knight was spawning in, I could drop my mote where it needed to go a little bit safer. This was to prevent getting sniped by 2 hobgoblins. It was usually around this time where a second wave of acolytes would be spawning in, cutting things a little close. I would then kill the acolytes in the room to ensure a safe teleport, although you can just tap at the center plate and run away and still be teleported. If I missed this timing or simply wanted to play a little more passively, I would just restart the entire cycle over again, waiting for acolytes to spawn again, killing them rapidly, and then killing the knights. Trying to drop in a mote with acolytes or hobgoblins looking at you can prove to be very difficult at times, and if you're on a flawless run, I would say it's better to just waste the mote and redo the cycle as opposed to trying to drop in the mote and potentially dying. Here are a couple of cycles in action. Again, I did this fight the exact same way on all of the classes, no special tricks or anything, just utilizing class abilities when appropriate. Hunters have a little advantage with their invis for dropping in motes, but don't rely on that 100%. When it comes to the final Centurions at the end, just don't rush it. Kill the orbs they send out and just take your time. The only things that will spawn in during this part are a bunch of Thrall, which are easy enough to kill, just don't get overwhelmed by them. Let's talk about the final boss now. I'm just going to skip Rainbow Road because it's pretty straightforward. If you really don't want to chance anything, don't use your Sparrow and kill literally everything on your way down. The final boss, without exotics, pinnacles, or rituals, is going to be a long, long fight. My first kill on my Warlock was 46 minutes long, where I did not use a sword. My Titan kill, on the other hand, was 20 minutes, where I did use a sword, but we will go over both strategies. The opening of this fight is chaos at best. I highly suggest starting with a super in this room so that you can stabilize. Most of the time you'll be able to get another super by the time you go to the boss damage room. If you're not able to do that, your intellect stat is probably low, or you're going so fast that you didn't get enough time to regenerate it, which is not a bad problem to have. In that case, just wait for more Scion spawns or kill some extra knights. Here's how this place works. Scions will spawn in on the opener in 3 groups of 3 along with 2 knights. The boss will be shooting you from all angles. Getting rid of Scions is important, but I will reiterate a point I made for the first encounter. Getting rid of a knight because it's killing you is not a bad idea, even if you do not pick up the motes. Survival is the most important thing in this encounter because you will be here a long time without a strong loadout. Scions are also on a timer. They respawn every so often, whereas the knights will only respawn when there are none in play. There are 4 different kinds of these rooms, and certain rooms will spawn Scions faster than others, or at least it feels like they do. We also need to make notes of where the knights spawn in when they respawn. For example, in this first room, the knights will spawn on the opposite side of the arena from where you started. This means that we will want to clear the nodes to the left and the right first. Trying to drop the first mote in the northernmost point means you will have no safety zone because the left and right side bosses will still be shooting at you, the 2 knights will respawn right next to you, and the ogre will spawn in the north point. This leaves us actually worse off than how we started. Clearing the left or right side first gives us some space from the knights that will respawn, allowing us to kill the ogre much safer. Once the ogre is dead, that corner of the room is now free to use as cover, which is vital to success. This is part of the reason why you want to drop that first mote in quickly, to reduce chaos and increase safety. So, we kill as many Scions as we can right off the bat, along with getting both knights to low health, killing one of them if they're getting too annoying. Once the room is down to only 2 knights, get both of them to low health to make back-to-back kills easier. Preferably, you'll want to kill 1 knight and pick up the motes first, as opposed to killing them back-to-back, because both knights will respawn a few seconds after you kill the second, leaving you less time to grab motes and run them over to the drop-off location. We drop the mote in this first room on the left or right side first, then get to cover to kill the ogre. This opens up the corner for safety. We then repeat killing the knights and clearing the corners. The room will get significantly easier to manage with one of the corners cleared. Here is a full cycle of this first room. Now, if you go quick enough, you will be able to avoid another Scion wave before going to the boss room, but you need to be really fast. I think about 20% of my runs had no second Scion wave, so it's a pretty low chance. However, you may have an ammo problem depending on how much ammo you use, and you'll want to go into the boss room with as full ammo as possible, meaning farming Scions is actually a good idea. When you're full on ammo, drop that final mote and head to the middle. You do not need to kill the final ogre unless you need to pick up ammo and you just need to play it safe. Class specific tips. For Titans, a suppression grenade is really going to help you here to stun the knights while you clean up the Scions. Warlocks, obviously healing rifts are very good, and for hunters, bottom tree Night Stalker for invis smoke grenades are strong, especially if you can keep Heart of the Pack stacked on you. In the boss room, we have this list of priorities. Number 1, don't die to Dark Entropy. Number 2, do not get hit by the teleport orb. Number 3, kill the hobgoblins. And number 4, boss damage. The hobgoblins are pretty easy to kill, but their retaliation blast will hurt badly if not avoided. Note that you can use the blocks on the platforms to hide behind when the boss does their teleport blast. Just make sure you don't get caught on the edge of it. Now, there are 2 strategies here for those without Mountaintop and Anarchy. You can use a sword, which is much riskier but will result in fewer damage phases, or you can not use a sword and have this take about double the time compared to a sword. I ended up dying far more in the Mote rooms than I did to the actual boss, which to me would say that using a sword is the play, unless you're a hunter, although it might still even be the play on a hunter. Titans and Warlocks get Ward and Well and Healing Rift, meaning you can actually stay engaged with the boss for a long time. The boss will kill you in 3 stomps, but if you get hit by any other damage at all during that, you will die in 2 stomps, which makes going in very, very risky. As for the teleport blasts while using a sword, I never really got a lock on what would cause the boss to use their teleport blast versus not using it when you are in its face. I would say about 80% of the time, the boss would not use a teleport blast on me if I was spamming sword attacks, but it is still possible for the boss to do it. If it happens during the first damage opportunity, where you're likely popping your super, it is devastating to your damage. I found that going behind the boss would reduce the chances of the boss using their teleport blast, but even that was a little inconclusive. Ideally, you should wait until the Kel Echo sends out a blast, then go in, as there appears to be a brief cooldown on the attack, although I have seen the boss fire rapid teleport blasts. Pop a Ward of Dawn or Well right on top of the boss and get to swinging, basically never stopping. Ward and Well will enable you to survive the entire time and turn what might be a 7 or 8 phase fight into as low as a 3 phase fight. On later boss teleports in the second half of the room, I would try to stand where the boss was teleporting to in order to do a quick heavy attack with Falling Guillotine, or if you don't have that, then a few sword swipes, and then run away. However, the bulk of your damage will come from the very beginning of the damage phase if you use this strategy. If you get unlucky and the boss happens to do their teleport attack, then you are going to lose a lot of damage. If you're on a Warlock, then you have a couple more chances, mainly towards the end, to do more sword damage with Healing Rift. On a Hunter, this is much more difficult to execute. Having no protection at all means you will die in 2 stomps everywhere, so the most you're really able to do is meet the boss where they will teleport, get in a heavy attack, and then just back out. You can get into melee range using Invis, but you can also just walk up to the boss for the most part. I just have a really hard time recommending even doing this on a Hunter without the use of raid exotics, pinnacle weapons, and high quality mods. It is incredibly risky on top of the fact that you have to do it for a lot of damage phases. Remember, my Warlock 7 phase took 46 minutes. For the average person, I just do not think it is a good use of your time. Is it doable? Absolutely. But it is so much harder than previous dungeons. Here's the cycle of boss damage in action, both with and without a sword. After the damage phase is over, it's not a terrible idea to wait in the boss room for your super to come back if you want to wait this out. In the spirit of the challenge, I did not wait, but I would not blame you if you did, as there does not appear to be anything forcing you into the next room. Going back into the Mote phase can be disorienting and chaotic. If you have your super, this is going to be the place to use it. It seems like a good idea to get up on high ledges or high ground in general, but I found that doing so gave me a false sense of security, and I'd often get into more trouble than if I just stayed on the ground and kept moving. Otherwise, the objective here is yet again to create a safety corner as fast as possible. The rooms have their own difficulty levels. Some rooms have more cover or a greater variance in the light and dark areas. For example, the room with the pyramid ramp in the middle is a bit easier because you have a good amount of cover. The room that has the giant ramps down to the center is harder because the majority of the room is dark and because scion waves seem to spawn faster. Getting acclimated to these rooms is a big part of being able to solo the dungeon. You will be here a while. Better weapons means you won't be here as long, but you'll still need to do at a minimum 3 and at most up to 8 rotations before you are done. Do not take risks. Be liberal about using your super to survive. This fight is much tougher than previous dungeons. That is all I have for doing the Prophecy dungeon by yourself. Good luck. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.